We are at Pei Aleph with Aleph 81a, about 10 lines down the page. Omar Rav Malkin al Yichud. Malkin al Yichud. Together? 81a,
yeah.
About 10 lines down. Omar Rav. Omar Rav. First one of the line is Rav. Malkin al Yichud ve'ein aitzun al Yichud. Okay. What does this mean? If somebody violates the laws of seclusion, which is we're really in the middle of the discussion where we are, the penalty for that is malchus. He gets whipped. However, ve'ein aitzun al Yichud. We don't prohibit the woman to her husband in a case of seclusion. Rashi says, when do we give malchus? Do we give a penalty for violating the laws of yichud? That's when a man is in seclusion with a single girl. But if if he's in seclusion with a married woman, then we do not give malchus. Why? Because if you give malchus, and people presume there was an adultery, and and you don't want to create a false rumor that her children are mamzerim. Okay, Mar Zutra he used to punish a married woman as well who went into seclusion with a man who wasn't her husband. Umachrez, but he would also make an announcement, and he would say, everybody should know that while I'm whipping this woman, she is not guilty of adultery and don't suspect her children. Amr Rav Nachman mi Parhatya Rav so Rav Nachman from this town of Parhatya says to Rav Ashi, Marinami Loki V'Lechris. He says to Rav Ashi, why don't you also, you can whip and you can also make an announcement. Amr Lai Ika D'Sham B'Ha V'Sham B'Ha. Rav Ashi wasn't convinced this was a good idea. Why? Because it isn't necessarily the case that somebody will hear both that the woman got malchus and that we announce that she isn't invalid. There wasn't necessarily a scenario of adultery. So therefore it's not a good idea. Amar Rav says, Malkin aloy tova hashmua. If we hear that if there's sort of a rumor going around that this guy is carelessly violating the Torah, so that's sufficient grounds to punish him. What do they call this? Corporal punishment. Shenemar al b'nei Eli ki lo tova hashmua. That the sons of Eli were getting punished because the rumor wasn't good. They didn't behave properly. Okay. Mar Zutra moisiv lo afsira al kasvei umikri le al b'nei. Mar Zutra, when he would punish somebody for lo tova hashmua, in other words, for a reckless disregard of commandments, so he would hold a whip and he would say while he was whipping the person, lo tova hashmua, that the rumors here are not good. So in other words, he's justifying and explaining why he's giving the person corporal punishments. Okay. Now we get back to the laws of yichud. Amar Rabba says, "Ba'ala be'ir ein chosh mishum yichud." This is a very important distinction, a very important heter for the laws of yichud. If the husband is in town, there is no yichud. Amar Rav Yosef says, "Pesach pasuach l'shus harabim." If the door is open to a public domain, ein chosh mishum yichud, there is no concern of yichud. Okay, I don't want to go too deep into halacha. But both of these are true. Halacha, goes with both of these. So, if the door is wide open, there won't be any yichud. If the door is unlocked but not open, that's already a question. Okay. Rav Bibi Ikla Lebei Rav Yosef Basa the Kar Chofta. 1 second. So Rabbi went to visit Rav Yosef. The car acharifta, after they ate something. Amar lahu shkulu dargi mitusi bivi. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, so basically Rabbi was there with his wife. And presumably they were staying upstairs in the attic. The attic wasn't connected by a staircase. It was sort of by these rolling stairs that were very heavy. So after if you finished eating, so Rav Bibi was in the attic, and Rav Yosef's wife was going to be in the house while Rav Yosef left the house. So Rav Yosef says, "Move away the steps." So Gemara says, 1 second. But Rav Yosef was still going to be in town. So why was there a concern of yichud between Rav Bibi and the wife of Rav Yosef if Rav Yosef was still in town? So Gemara says, "Shiny Rav Bibi dishvinte havoi the guy sibei." Rav Bibi was an exception because it seems to be he was a partner with Rav Yossi, and he was sort of very familiar with his wife. So the permission of Baal Be'er, of her husband being in town, was not sufficient. Okay. Next Gemara is interesting because there's two versions of the Gemara. Each one is exactly the opposite. Amar of Ashi, Amar of Kahana. The first version of the Gemara. Anoshimi bachutz, v'noshimi b'fnim. You have a house with men on the outside and women on the inside. There's an interior room which is only possible to get to by going through an outer room. Ein chashim shemichud is not a concern of yichud. Okay. And the reason for this is that the men who are on the outside don't necessarily have a way, there's no reason to go through the middle room, to go through the room that's on the inside. However, the opposite is not true. If you have a noshim b'fnim, noshim b'chutz, if you have men on the inside and women on the outside, so the men are going to have to travel through the area where the women are. So then, chayshim shemichud, there is a concern of yichud. However, b'masnisa in the brayts, a ton of ibcha, we have exactly the opposite. So in other words, if the men are on the inside, if the men are on the outside, one second. In the second version of the second version, if the women are on the inside and the men are on the outside, so then we're concerned that if the women are on the inside and the men are on the outside. Previously, the Gemara said that was a concern. According to this Gemara, there is no concern. Why is there no concern? 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Yeah. If the men are on the outside and the woman is on the inside, in the first brayso said there was no concern. In the second brayso there is a concern. Why is there a concern? Because one of the men might go inside the room with the woman and be yichud with one of the women in the interior room. If, however, the men are on the inside and the women are on the outside, which according to the previous brayso was a concern, according to this brayso it is not a concern. Why not? Because the women are not walking to the men. And even if they did, there are multiple men in the inside room. And for the men to walk to the outer room, where there are plenty of men, and another man from the inside room could also be walking through the outside room, then similarly, there's no cause for concern, which is the opposite of the previous brayso, which said there was cause for concern. Amar Abayas says, because you have the statement of Rav Kahana, you have the brayso that's the opposite. I'm going to be machmer. Okay. Abaya Dayar Golfi, Rova Dayar Kono. Basically, what they did was 1 second. Yeah. Basically, when they were officiating at a wedding or there was some other event where there were a lot of people, so to stop the men and the women from going into each other's areas, they would hang these things. He would Abaye would put sticks. Rava would put these jugs. I'm sorry, Abaye would put jugs, and Rava would use these sticks. And basically, that was sort of the mechitza. And if you walked through it, it would sort of be very noisy. The jugs would like bang against each other. That was what they did. Okay, Omer Oven. Sakva Deshata Rigla, the worst time of year for the mingling between men and women is the time of Yom Tov. Hanach Shvuyasa. Okay. because all the men and the women are coming to shul, and there's a lot of mingling. Okay, where are we? There were these captives that came to Nahardai, girls. So Askinu Lebeir of Amram Chasida. So Rav Amram, who was a chassid, he was a great scholar. He decided the safest place for them to sleep is in his house, in the attic. Same thing. Ashkulu Darga Mekamayo. Basically they moved the steps away. The steps were very heavy. As we'll see, it took 10 people to carry the steps, and they moved the steps away, and there was no way for Rav Amram to climb to the attic. One of them was getting undressed, and I guess close to the hole in the floor, and Rav Amram happened to have seen it, and was very aroused. The steps that took over 10 people to carry, he quickly took the steps and he put it right by the hole. Dalia lechudei, he moved it on his own. Solek vazel, he started walking up. Kimota lepalgadarga, when he got up to the halfway up the steps, ifshech, he sort of took control of himself, and he sort of grabbed the railing and stuck his feet in the ground. And Rama Kollel, and he started screaming, and he started saying, Nura be Amram, there's a fire in the house of Amram. Also, Rabbanan, so all the rabbis came. Obviously, this is not a very pleasant moment for your students to see you. So the student said to him, you're embarrassing us. He says, you're right. Better that I be embarrassed now than I be embarrassed in the next world. Okay, anyway, so you're talking about one of these greatest scholars. So Ashbe the Yinpik Minei. So he required that the evil inclination leave him. He was such a scholar, he was able to tell his Yetzer Hara what he wanted. Nafak Minei Kiamuda Denura. So a column of fire exited his body. Amalei Chazi Da'at Nurova No Bisro. The No Adifa Minoch. That he says, despite the fact that you're fire and I'm just flesh and blood, I was able to control myself and have you, and take control of the situation. Rav Meir, okay, now a few other people who messed around with the Yetzer Hara. Not a good idea. Okay. Rav Meir have mislights by Rav Meir made fun of those that sinned. He basically saying that it was very easy to control oneself. Sure enough, that sort of aroused the Yetzer Hara to seduce him. So Yom Echad, one day, one day the Sultan pretended to be a woman on the other side of the river. There was no boat. So Nokat Mitzra, there was a rope that was moving that went from one side to the other. And he started to cross the river on the rope. He mata Palga Mitzra, when he got through half of the rope, half the river, Shafke, he let it go. In other words, not him. The Yetzer Hara basically stopped the game, and he said to him, Amar. He says to Rav Meir, "Ilav dikamakras berakia hizor Rav Meir v'tirasa shavisi l'dombach tarti moi." If not for the fact that sort of I've heard God say, "Don't mess with Rav Meir," I would have had you. I would have made your blood into 2 coins. I would have proved my point. Okay. Similarly, Rabbi Kiva have mislights by Rav Meir. Rabbi Kiva would degrade those that sinned. Yom Echad, one day, the Sultan appeared to him as an attractive woman on the top of a palm. Nakti the dikla v'kasolak v'azal. He started climbing up the palm tree. As soon as he got to half the branch, the Sultan sort of ended the spiel. He said, Amar Ilav Demachras Barakia, Hizar Ravikiv Terasa Shavis Ladmach Tarti Moi. If not for the fact that I heard God say, don't mess with you, I would have turned your blood into 2 coins. Okay, Plimai have a Rogal Amar Kol Yoma, Gira Be'enei the Sultan. Plimai would say every day, sort of spears in the eyes of the evil one, which, by the way, one is not supposed to say, and that's the Gemara in, where is it? So I believe it's Sukkah Gimel. somewhere around there. I don't know exactly where this is. Yeah, and by the way, a lulav nesri is exactly what the definition of these words. So a lot of Tanam would take a lulav nesri and say these words, and the Gemara still says it's not recommended, specifically because it rouses the ire of the evil one. So sure enough, this is what happened with Plima. So this is what he would say: Ma'ala Yom Kippuri. So you think it's Erev Yom Kippur and you're going to get away with it? Not quite. Hayidmi like Anya. So the Sultan appears to Plima like a poor man. Also, Kara Abavon. He goes to his door. He screams at him. He says, "Afikuli rifta. I need a loaf of bread." Amrulay Yomiki idna kula amagavoy. I know Avroy. I live a krivule rifta. So Rabibi opens the door. He hears the guy demanding bread. So the guy says to him, he says, "Look, every person today is having a suda in honor of Yom Kippur, and I'm going to be on the outside and alone. I'd like to come inside." One second. So I live he let him into the house. Today everybody's eating in groups, and me you're going to put in the kitchen and make me eat on my own. I want to join your party. So fine. So he let him join the main suda. So he said there, his body was filled with boils and blisters. And he was acting with, shall we say, extremely poor etiquette, as we'll see in a moment. Amrulay, so they said to him, Tiv Shopper, maybe, act a little normal and regular. So Amrulay, Havali Kasa, he says, bring me a cup. Yavale Kasa. So they brought him a cup. Achmar Shodabe Kichai. He sort of coughed up some phlegm and he spit it into the cup that they just had poured him. 1 second. Nachrubei, they scolded him, and Shakomis, he sort of seized up and he died, and he pretended whatever he wasn't a person. He died. Shamu, they heard Plimi Kot Lagavra. So the rumor went out that Plima killed somebody. So he had to go out and hide himself in the bathroom. The bathroom is not really the bathroom, it's sort of the outhouse. It's at the edge of town, so nobody should find him. So the Sultan sort of went and chased him. Nofakame, so sort of this so I guess this dead person sort of chasing after him. He pretended to die, then he chases after him. He finds him. He knew exactly where he was, obviously, because he's an angel. And he revealed that he was really the Sultan pretending. He says to him, "Why do you scream at me?" He says, he says, "So what should I say?" Okay, I'm sorry. In other words, the Sultan was upset that he was sort of saying spears in the eyes every single day. So he says, "So what should I say?" He says, "You should daven that God should protect you. Basically, God should be angry with me." Okay.
Now, Rabbi, this has got to be the low light of anybody's day when the devil himself chases you in the bathroom.
We're not done yet. Rav Chia or Rashi have a ruggle called Aiden to have enough alape. Rav Chia would have a custom every time he fell on his face. In other words, after Shemana Esrei, you feel sapayim. Have Amar, he would say, God should protect me from the evil one. One day his wife overheard him saying this. Amr, he says, hold on. Amr, she says, hold on a second. Michti. Evidently, Rav Chia wasn't exactly he had separated from his wife for many years because of his lack of physical strength. He was an older person at the time. My time exactly why does he think that he is sort of susceptible to the Yetzer Hara when clearly he's already we've already separated for many years. Yom Echad, one day, Havkegoris begins. He was learning in the garden, and she decided to seduce her husband. Kashta nafsha, she sort of She gets she sort of dressed the part. And Chalfa Vatanya Kamei, and she sort of walked back and forth in front of him. Amr Losa, he says to her, Man At, who are you? Amr, she says, Anach Arusa. She's a well-known prostitute. This is Rav Chia's wife saying this to him. The Hadri, I came back. The Hadri Yom, I finished my day at the brothel, and I'm sort of walking around now. Tetava, so he wanted to lay with her. Amr lay, Aisiniya Lahach Rumna Deresh Tzutzitza. So they agreed the payment would be sort of a pomegranate at the top of a tree. So Shavar Ozal, so he jumped up to the tree, he picked up the pomegranate, and Asinile, and they had intercourse together. Okay. He also Labesi, and then they said they went on their ways, and Rav Chia did not realize at any time that this was his wife. He also Labesi have Kashagro Dvisayu Tanura. When he came home, his wife was sort of warming the furnace. Solak v'kayos b'gaveis, he jumped into the furnace. Amrlei, my high. So she says to him, like, what are you, crazy? Amrullah, hachi v'hachi havamai. So he told her the story that happened, that he was seduced by a prostitute. Amrlei, so she says, don't worry about it. I know Havai. I was her. He didn't believe her. Until she gave him the signs that made it clear that it had to have been her. It couldn't have been, it wasn't a real story. Amrullah, ana miya li yisur echavni. He said, you're right that, ultimately speaking, I didn't sin, but the truth is I did have intention to sin. Kol yom shalois tzaddik, every day for the rest of his life. Hayamis ana, he was in pain. Achameis ba'izamisa, he died of grief from having sort of succumbed to what he thought was a seduction of a prostitute. The Tanya we saw this Gemara before. Isha haferim v'Hashem yislach la. Isha haferim v'Hashem yislach la. The husband nullifies the vow, but God should forgive her. The obvious question is, so a woman makes a vow, the husband nullifies it, and she still needs God's forgiveness. There's no vow. Who cares if she violated it? The husband nullified it. What's it referring to? A woman who commits to become a Nazira. The husband goes ahead and invalidates it. But she doesn't know shehefer la baila. And she was violating the laws of Naziris. And still, even though her Naziris truly was not engaged, in other words, her husband had nullified it. However, she still requires repentance. God has to forgive her. When Rabbi Kiva would reach these verses, he would cry, and he would say, someone who had the intention to eat pork, and what do you know? He happened to have been in a kosher store. The Torah says he needs atonement. Somebody who actually ended up eating pork certainly it certainly requires an atonement. Similarly, we find similar verse. He doesn't know any sins, and he has to atone for the sin. He would cry when he reached this verse. Somebody with the intention of eating non-kosher fat, and he ended up eating kosher fat. The Torah still says he still requires atonement. Certainly, someone who actually sins requires significant atonement. Isi ben Yehudah Aimer, this should cause grief to basically to everyone, because the Torah's standards are basically, if you had intention to sin, the story of Rav Chia, then it requires significant atonement, even though Rav Chia actually, technically speaking, never ended up sinning. Okay. A person could be in seclusion with his mother. Amar Rav Yehudah, Amar Rav Asi. Rav Yehudah says in the name of Rav Asi, a person is allowed to be in seclusion with his sister, and he's allowed to live in the same house as his mother or his daughter. But he can't live in the same house, for Rashi explains, for a long period with his sister. And like we explained, the reason for this is because of a certain event that happened where they sort of nullified the desire for close relatives. And that would include a mother, a daughter, or a sister. When I said this in front of Shmuel, Amar he said, also as Yachan Kol Arayah B'Torah Afilu Behema. Shmuel was extremely stringent. He said one cannot be in seclusion with any erva, including an animal. We'll soon see that that's not the animal or other males is not included. We'll get to that in a few moments. Okay, so now we learn to the Mishnah. The Mishnah clearly indicates that one is permitted to be in seclusion with his mother or daughter. Do you have to do Shmuel? This seems to be a question. Shmuel says, what do you do with this brisa? His sister or his mother-in-law or any other erva, no yichud. Ella be'edim with witnesses. Be'edim in shlei be'edim loy. Specifically with other people there, but not himself. Ella, so we have contradiction. Ella, what must it be? Tanoi, it's machlekes. Tanya, we learned, Omer of Meir, Yizaru bi mipnei biti. Rav Meir basically said, be careful of me for my daughter. I.e., Rav Meir was careful not to be in seclusion with his daughter. Omer of Tarfon, Yizaru bi mipnei kalosim. Be careful of me from my daughter-in-law. Liglagol of Oise Talmud. So one of his students sort of made fun of that. So Rav says in the name of Chanina ben Gamliel, where that student ended up sleeping with his mother-in-law. Okay, so in other words, it's a debate. It's a debate between the Tanam. If yichud is permitted between a mother, a daughter, or a sister, those are blood relatives, not in-law relatives. So it's a debate, and Shmuel says that it is prohibited. The Mishnah says it's permitted. Now the Bryce also notes the possibility of, and Shmuel said it as well, afilu and behema even with an animal. The Mishnah says one is permitted to seclude himself with his mother or daughter. The Gemara adds according to the same opinion, a sister will be permitted as well. And Shmuel disagrees. Shmuel says it's not permitted. Okay. Abaya mechloli mikula devra. Yeah, according to one of the interpretations of Rashi, Abaya would not allow one shepherd to be in the field alone. Rav Sheshes maverle metzra. Rav Sheshes would not walk through a field of animals. Rav Chanan min Ardai ikul Rav Kahana. Rav Chanan went to Rav Kahana's house, to the town of Pumnara. Hazid Yosef Kagaris. He saw he was learning, and there was an animal in front of him. So he says to him, don't you know that even with an animal it is prohibited to be secluded? And he says, love that toy, I didn't realize. Rav says, okay, so basically Rav's theme here is if you have women who have an animosity toward each other, then yichud between those two women is permitted. What are examples of these? Two potential Yavamas, so two sister-in-laws that would both be eligible for Yibam. Because the Gemara says these are part of the 8 women that are not believed for each other because they're always concerned that they'll be fighting over the same man. Im Isha v'chamaisa, a woman or her mother-in-law. Im Isha bas baila, with a woman and the daughter of her husband. That would be the woman's stepdaughter. Im Isha v'tinoikas shedas tambia ve'enim meiseres atzma l'bia. Okay, this last one's a very, very crucial one. With a woman and a girl who knows what intercourse is, but it isn't mature enough to have a desire. So it's 6, 7 years old, 8 years old, whatever it is. We'll soon see that the definition of that is sort of shame. In other words, as soon as she has shame in front of somebody who's close to her, that's sort of an indication that she is beginning to have a desire. Okay, higdilu zayashim b'ksusay. With the mother and the daughter, they're allowed to live in the same house, and when they get older, so then they each have to sleep sleep with clothes if they want to sleep in the same bed. The kama and how old? Amar Barazo, Baravazo, Amar Ravasi, Tinoikes Bas Teisha Shana V'Yem Echad. A girl who's 9 years old, Tinik Ben Shteimes Shana V'Yem Echad, or a boy who's 12 years old. That would be for the mother or the daughter. Eged Amri, some say. Tinoikes Bas Shteimes Shana V'Yem Echad, Tinik Ben Sholosh Es Shana V'Yem Echad. Either a girl who's 9 years old or 12 years old. And both of them can, so it's not just age, it also has to be Shadayim Nechoinu B'Sarayach Sameach. It has to be physical, the physical attributes of maturity, of puberty. Have to have begun. In other words, as long as she doesn't have these physical attributes, development of the breasts and increase in hair, and that'd be pubic or underarm hair, then it would not be necessary. She would still be considered less than the age of, and they would not be required to sleep with clothing. That would be for the father or the mother or the son and the daughter. Okay. Amar Rav from Bar Papa. Amar Rav Chizda. Rav from Bar Papa says the name of Chizda. Lo shana lo she'ena b'yisha lamed l'fon of Aram. This is only true if she's not embarrassed to be unclothed in front of her father, let's say, or the mother in front of her son. Al b'yisha lamed l'fon of Aram osir. But if the daughter in front of the father or the son in front of the mother is embarrassed, then it would be prohibited. My time, what's the reason? Yetzer Alavsha, it means that they're beginning to have sort of a shame with their close contacts, and that's an indication that they sort of have a desire. They're maturing. Rav Acha Abba Ikla Lebei Rav Chizda Chasnei. Rav Acha Abba went to visit his son-in-law Rav Chizda. Shaka Lebarbarte. So he was playing with his granddaughter. Aisva Bekanfes. He put her on his lap. Amar Leile several on Mar so Rav Chizda says, don't you understand? This little girl is a married woman. I accepted Kiddushin. He said, what do you mean? Can't do that. You violated the law of Rav. The Amar of Yehudah Rav. We saw this in the beginning of Ishma Kaddish, Daf Aleph. V'temer Belazar, and some says Belazar. Also, Shiktana. You are not allowed to marry off your daughter when she's young. Until she gets old enough to say that she wants to marry this specific person. So this is in other words, this is Rav Acha Barabba is rebuking Rav Chizda, his son-in-law. So Rav Chizda's son-in-law says back to him, he says, Maranami overlay ad Shmuel, you're violating the laws of Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel, Amish Damshin Beisha. You can't sort of use a woman, and now you're sitting and playing with her on your lap. Amar Leis, he says, no, it doesn't quite work that way. Anak idach the Shmuel spherely. I hold like the other opinion of Shmuel. The Amar Shmuel hakolat l'shem shemayim. Over here, I'm sort of, I want her mother to see that I care about her mother, meaning my daughter-in-law, to see that I care about her daughter, my granddaughter. So therefore, there's nothing wrong with a grandfather playing with his granddaughter, and it's not called sort of using a woman. Okay, that concludes the laws of Yichud, and now we get to a discussion which is very on a very similar track, which is, it's sort of basic common sense for what type of profession a person should choose. Okay. And some of these sensibilities maybe we don't have anymore, and I'm not sure that's a good thing either. Lo yilmad adam ravak seifrim. A bachelor should not be a young teacher of boys, of students. We'll see why in a moment. And a woman shouldn't either teach young students. Rabbi Lazar, I remember this is the days, by the way, before girls would go to school, so this is obviously referring to boys. Rabbi Lazar, I remember af mishe'ela isha. Rabbi Lazar says even somebody who doesn't have a wife. Now, what exactly does that mean? A bachelor, someone who doesn't have a wife. We'll have to explain what Rabbi Lazar is referring to. The first instance of the Mishnah was a ravak, a bachelor, and Rabbi Lazar talks about somebody who doesn't have a wife. Sounds similar, right?
Right.
Okay, we'll get to it. Lo yelamed seifrim, he shouldn't teach in the boys' school. Rabbi Yehudah says, La yira ravak behemo. A bachelor should not serve as a shepherd. And two bachelors should sort of not sleep next to each other. And the rabbis permit it. My time, and what's the reason? Are we concerned that that they're sort of going to abuse the kids? But Tanya, we learned the rabbis told Rav Yehudah that Jews are not. There's no concern here of Jews sleeping with mishkav zachar, with men. V'lo behemo. and not with animals either. Okay, so the concern can't be an inherent concern that he'll abuse the kids. Elawat, elaravak mishum amsa dinuki, isham mishum avasa dinuki. The reason why a bachelor or a woman should not serve as a teacher of students is because the parents often come for pickup. So we don't want a bachelor flirting around with all the mothers who are going to pick up their young sons. And the same thing is true the opposite for a woman for a woman to take the job when all the fathers will be picking up as well. Rabbi Lazar says, even a person without a wife. Now we ask the question, what a bachelor sounds like a person without a wife. Samara says, Iboilu. Question for Rabbi Lazar. Misha Ela Isha Klal. What does Rabbi Lazar mean? In other words, the rabbis say a bachelor meaning somebody who was never married. And Rabbi Lazar is saying even somebody who's married and is either divorced or is a widowed, is a widower. Or Idilma, or are we talking about a person who's married, but he's not together with his wife? So, for example, one of my ancestors, the father of Tzila Melech Dinev, he served as a traveling Malamed, and he would sort of travel around teaching students. And he was married at the time, but he was not. But he wasn't with his wife. He'd go away for a few months at a time and sort of make an income that way. So would Rabbi Lazar say that he's also included? Tashma af according to Rabbi Lazar's opinion, such a person shouldn't either be teaching students. Somebody who's married but his wife isn't with him. Rabbi Yehudah says that a shepherd should not serve as a bastard should not serve as a shepherd. Tanya Amr Rabbi Yehudah. The rabbis told Rabbi Yehudah, like next Yisrael Mishkav Zachar V'Leal Behema, because there is no Jews are not suspect for Mishkav Zachar, sleeping with men, or with animals. Therefore, there's no concern of yichud with either category. Okay, let's continue. If a guy has a business where he primarily deals with women, it's a it's a business that's oriented toward dealing with females. He has jewelry store, or he has a perfume store, or whatever, any of these tachshiti noshim focused on women, then he should not have seclusion with women, and this means even more than one woman. Even two women would be problematic. Sorry. 1 second, hold on. Sorry, even with multiple women, even though typically many women, more than two, would be permitted, let's say 4 women would be permitted, this person should not seclude himself even with 4 women. Okay, and not only that, a person should not teach his son to go into such a business. Rameir says, a person should teach his son a clean and light job. And he should pray to the one who wealth and assets belong to him. Every profession has wealth and poverty. It isn't poverty or wealth that's part of the profession. His income is according to his merit. Shimon Elazar says, have I seen in my life, have I seen an animal or a bird that has a profession, and they get income without much pain. The purpose of it was to serve to serve men. And my purpose is to serve God. That I should be able to earn my income without much pain. My actions have sort of caused me to be unworthy of having to have an easy income. It's damaged my income potential that I have to actually work hard to earn money. Abagurian ish tzadoyan. Abagurian said in the name of Abaguria, a person should not teach his son to drive camels. Or kadar, that's a 1 second here.
What?
Chomer is a donkey driver. Gomel is a camel driver. Kadar is a there seems like it's some sort of guy who's sort of trading in pots. Safan, a ship captain. Roya, a shepherd. Chenveni is sort of a money changer. Why? List them because all these professions are filled with stealing, thievery. Rabbi Yehudah says in his name, Hachamorin, the donkey drivers, Ruban Rishon, most of them are wicked because they steal all the time. They steal all the time. Vagamal and those that drive camels through the desert, Ruben Ksherim, most of them are kosher. Why? Because it's a dangerous profession, and it requires you to sort of have trust and faith in God. Yeah. But an even more dangerous profession is to be a safan, to drive a boat, a captain of a ship. Ruben Chasidim, most of them are Chasidim. They're great believers in God. Why? Because they experience far more danger, and they have to have far more trust in God. Tov Shebarifim, the best of the doctors, L'Gehenim. He is sent to Gehenim. Okay, why is that? Rashi says, first of all, because they make a very comfortable profession. They sort of don't concern themselves with having to connect with God for parnasa. Moreover, because they often kill people, and they have the ability to heal, and they charge. They have the ability to heal the poor, and they charge for it. Okay. By the way, I didn't make this up. It's all straight Rashi.
But back then, I mean, doctors were by and large utter quacks.
I am concerned that that's
as dangerous as
I am concerned that is a current problem as well. Tov Shabbat Tavachim, and if the past 2 years has taught you anything, it should be that. The most righteous of the butchers is the partner of Amalek. Why is this? Because it's very difficult to take the loss of an animal if it's not kosher, and they often sell it anyway. And again, this is a phenomenon that is sadly not new, but not something of the past either. If the past 20 years, and I'm not even that old, and I know too many stories about this. Okay, Rabbi Yehudah says. Famous statement from Rabbi Yehudah. I'm going to leave behind all of the professions of the world, and I will only teach my son Torah. A person will eat its reward in this world, and its reward continues in the next world. The principle stays for the world to come. Any other profession, anakin, it's not like this. If a person becomes ill, or becomes old, or it becomes very difficult to do his job, then he can't do his work. He dies in hunger. He doesn't get paid for it. Torah is not like this. It protects him from all evil. In his young days, and it gives him hope and eternity in his later days. I remember when a person is young, what does it say? Those that hope in God will have strength. What does it say when a person is old? They're still ripe in an old age. Similarly, you find with Avram Zoken Hashem Berach as Avram Kollel. Avram Avinu is old, and God blessed him with everything. But Avram Avinu is called Torah Kula, and we find that Avram Avinu fulfilled all the commandments of the Torah. Nitna before the Torah was given. Shenemar, as the verse states. Avram Avinu has listened to my voice, and he's fulfilled my commandments. Stop here.
That's your phone, huh?
We'll finish tomorrow.